we in a time right now. I want to have it like just mind management. I want to talk about mind management, how to manage the mind. Uh, I'm big on psychology. I read a lot of books on psychology. Carl Jung, very famous psychologist, Alfred Adler, uh, emotional intelligence, a number of books, right? So I'm a big fan of psychology. I don't have any formal training. I just dabbled on my own, and something that I want to share with you guys. That I think is. I'm actually in my office right now. It's the end. It's by 8 or 7:30. I'm just kind of like taking a breather, and something I think that's interesting, right? That's interesting when it comes to psychology is if you can understand how the mind works. If you understand how your mind, this self analysis, if you do psychoanalysis, understand how your own psyche works, how you'll understand how the human psyche works, right? You'll pretty much, once you can understand how your own psyche works, you'll have an understanding of how the general principle of human psychology operates. So check this out. If you, there's a technology called virtual reality. We're all familiar with VR, virtual reality. It's a technology. Uh, if you understand virtual reality, how virtual reality works, the mechanisms, then you'll understand a lot how your mind operates, how the world operates, how the world functions, how reality, you know, is created. So using virtual reality, let's just talk about that a little bit. So in terms of virtual reality, all virtual reality is it's a computer generated or an artificial man-made, computer-made, generated environment. So it's an artificial environment that's created by computers. That's what virtual reality is, and that's just a lay answer. It's just an environment that has been uh, generated by computers. So it's a simulation, right? It's a model that mimics a situation, a scenario, or again, it's an environment mimicking an environment. That's another way to look at it. Virtual reality is it's a computer environment that mimics or it's a simulation of another environment. That's all it is. So let's understand this. How do you go into virtual reality? How do you enter into VR? Well, going into virtual reality, obviously you'd have to put on a device, right? It's called the Oculus, right? Oculus just means vision. It comes from the Latin and it means vision. So when you put on these devices, which is an Oculus, uh, what it does is it imprints an image. It imprints, I'm going to say this again, it imprints. Imprints mean it presses upon, makes a mark, or it stamps an image up on your brain. This is what's happening when you put on the Oculus. An image, a picture, a virtual picture is being imprinted, stamped upon the brain. Your brain is what's a good analogy? It's comparable to a CPU, computer processing unit. The brain simply processes information. That's all the brain does. It's a processor. It has the occipital lobe. Uh, It has your frontal lobes, has your neocortex, it has the amygdala, the reptilian brain. This is a few faculties that are responsible. You have billions of neurons. You have the synapse. You have the synaptic network. These are how thoughts are formulated. Neurons forming networks by means of the synapse. So these are just faculties in the brain. It's not really necessary to know all of that. So the image is imprinted upon the brain. The brain processes that image. After the processing of the image, those images being processed are transmitted into your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind, not knowing or not distinguishing between what's false, what's real, it doesn't. It then transmits information throughout your CNS, central nervous system, and your body operates. Your body moves according to the information. Your emotions flow according to the processing of the information. again, the information is the image that's being imprinted upon the brain. Brain processes it. It's transmitted via subconscious mind. Uh, Subconscious mind via synaptic networks formulates thoughts. Thoughts ultimately creates the way you move, right? Uh, so there's no such thing as anxiety. Anxiety is it's a label. There's panic attacks, ADHD. All of these things are just a result of the brain processing pictures, images. The brain processes those images, those pictures. And those pictures, again, are transmitted throughout the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind, not knowing the difference between right or wrong, it's indiscriminatory, uh, transmits that information throughout your CNS, your central nervous system, throughout your entire body. And again, you react and you move accordingly. And this is how the oculus works. That's why, that's why when you see people put these things on, you see their body. They react to what the oculus is imprinting on their brain, right? You see people boxing. They start boxing. They start kicking. Whatever the virtual world is that they've been. There's a process called immersion. Immersion means deeply involved or dipped or submerged in. That's one of the processes of virtual reality. You go through immersion. There's non-immersion, there's complete immersion, there's semi-immersion, full immersion, and these are different levels of how this thing operates. But immersion pretty much means that you are completely engaged, right, to where that the mind is tricked. See, the whole thing is it tricks the brain tricks the mind tricks the brain, etc. It's a trick to the where the mind suspends a non-belief or a disbelief, right? So in other words, you believe that the virtual reality is real. Your presence is presently in that world because the mind is tricked and the mind suspends the disbelief that this is not real. This is, so you believe it's real on a subconscious level. And this is what virtual reality is. Well, why am I talking about this? Because it's important to understand. Now, I guess it's way more technical. I kept it simple. I didn't use the jargons. I kept it simple. It's way more technical than that. There's a lot of data, a lot of details, a lot of techniques, a lot of mechanisms, right? Machinery, technicalities that's involved. But I just kept it simple for you. And why I talked about the virtual reality is this, because now let's take the Oculus off and let's just talk about life, right? And how the mind works and how everything works. I preface what I'm saying with that because it's very similar in this sense. As we go through our journey and as we go through our lives and day to day, and we have our experiences and we have our heartbreaks and we have our failures and we have our flaws and our imperfections and we have our setbacks and knockdowns, get up, knock back down, get up, knock down, get up, don't get up, whatever, the jump up, right? As we go through the roller coaster of life, the ups and downs of life, all these experiences creates the images that are created are based off the experience. So when you experience something positive, a positive image is created and deposited in the repository of your mind. The repository of the brain is called the hippocampus. You can research, Google it. Hippo, like the word, like a hippo, campus. So you spell it the same way, hippo campus. It's a, what is it? Compound, right? It's a compound. And the hippocampus is responsible. So it's like it would be like what's a good analogy? USB? Right. USB stores for your computer. Hippocampus is a USB for the brain. It stores everything. All your data, all your experiences, all your trauma is locked up, pent up in the hippocampus. And in terms of bytes, it has trillions of gazillion gigabytes. So it can store unlimited kind of information. Think of the hippocampus like that. So what happens now is all these experiences, good or bad, doesn't matter, good, bad, or different, is stored in the hippocampus. So what happens now is that there's something called in your environment that's constantly around us called stimuli, right? Or a stimulant, or another word for it is a trigger, right? So when we have now, as we're going through life and we're collecting all these experiences that we have, good, bad, or indifferent, then when we, as we continue through life, we will. Life is a cyclical thing, right? Cyclical just means a cycle that repeats itself over and over, rinse, wash, repeat. So there's nothing new under the sun. It's biblical. So that means that we're constantly going to be repeating the same thing. It's a never-ending movie, and the movie just has different characters, but it's the same movie with different characters, right? You break up with this guy and you meet another guy, and guess what? Something similar happens, and then you meet another something similar. So it's the same movie repeating itself, but with different characters. You break up with this girl, and then you meet this girl, and everything is wonderful, and you might get a year or two or three or months, whatever. Then something happens, and then the rinse, wash, repeat, rinse, wash, repeat, rinse, wash, repeat. And it doesn't. There's exceptions to the rules, but I'm being very general, right? So don't stick a pin. I can hear the rebuttals in my head already. I can hear the pushbacks. Being very general, everything is general. I'm generally speaking. I can't say it enough. Generally speaking. Uh, so what happens now is with the mind, with as we go through life and we accumulate these experiences, triggers in your environment, stimulants or stimuli, they're all meaning triggers, right? Triggers the trauma or the event that occurred 5 days ago, 5 minutes ago, 5 years ago, 5 months ago. And what happens now is the image, because it's being stored in the hippocampus, it's stored as an image. How could I say? Think of a film for like a movie projector. You have the film, and there are images on that film, and it projects onto the wall, and you can watch a movie. Well, it's stored as something of that. It's called superposition, right? So it's like superposition means like layer on top of layer on top of layer on top of layer. So it's one, but it's superposition. So think of one line like this, but like infinite, layers, right? So it's layered, infinite layers. And each layer is an experience you've had. And depending on which layer is projected onto the wall of your mind, right? Think of, again, like I said, think of a reel and a projector that projects movies on the wall. The layer is the film. Tomorrow I have this experience. And let's say it's an experience that triggered the fifth layer or the 10th layer. Because remember, the layers. And think of each layer like a story building, a storied building, and the building has 1,000 floors, right? One building with 1,000 floors. So whatever I experience is going to unlock one of those floors. It's going to open up one of the doors on those floors, and whatever that floor is, that layer represents some experience that I have stored in the hippocampus. It's going to open up that floor, and that trauma that I have stored is going to be projected on the wall of my mind. It's going to be projected, meaning it's going to be brought about in my subconscious mind. It's going to be placed in the front seat of my frontal lobes, my neocortex, my occipital lobe, my retina. It's what I'm going to see, meaning I'm going to see whatever I'm experiencing based off what door or what floor I tapped into, that the trigger or the stimuli tapped into, awakened and brought to the surface. So now this is why sometimes people overreact. You ever see somebody go like they exaggerate a situation, and then when you get to the root of the matter with something very simple, they got triggered by something so minuscule. But it wasn't the minuscule event. It was the trauma that's stored in in those layers of the subconscious mind that was open. And now it comes to the surface and the person reacts. They're reacting based off an image stored in that subconscious in the superposition layer state. They're reacting to an image. It's stored, your experiences are stored as an image in your subconscious mind. So you're reacting to an image. Now, an image is why I use the virtual reality is this, because the image happened 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 5 days ago, whatever. The image doesn't exist. It's like the virtual reality. The virtual reality environment doesn't exist. It's artificial. It's a farce. It's fake. It's man-made. It is not genuine, right? So this, when you're wearing the Oculus, it creates an image, and your body responds to it. When we have these different experiences or we encounter something in our day-to-day activities, it triggers and stimulant and it unlocks that layer of whatever trauma that you have stored, and that trauma shows up and it controls your behavior. It controls your reaction to a situation. It controls your mood, your emotions, and all of that destroys your life, provided it's a negative. We're talking about a negative trauma. It doesn't add value to your life. It takes away from your life. It ends relationships. It can cause financial ruin. Right. It can be chaotic. So so I say all this to say that the way how we combat this or how we overcome this is by uh, interfacing. Now, interface means just like I'm doing here. I'm interfacing with the camera. Interface just simply means to interact. In the computer world, it's a jargon used mean to you engage with a computer. You're using a computer. You're interfacing. I'm the surface, the screen of this computer gives me is a portal. Interface means it's a portal. The surface of the computer is a portal. It allows me to interact with the computer, well, not with the computer, but with the contents within the computer. So I have access. Google, I interface with Google because Google allows me to get into its archives and pull information. So interfacing. Why am I using interfacing? Because you have to interface with yourself. You have to overcome yourself and to overcome your psyche, do psychoanalysis, to overcome childhood trauma, right? That so many of us are out picturing. Remember the image, virtual reality I talked about it 5 minutes ago? Many of us are out picturing the image that's being pressed on our brain, the image that's constantly popped up and impressed upon our psyche and then creating a reaction. We have to interface with that image before the stimulant. You have to, I'm going to say it again, you have to interface, means interact, come face to face and enter into. That's what interface means. You have to interface with the image before the stimulant, before the stimuli in your environment, before the triggering scenario. Because there's things that's going to trigger those images that are layered, right? Using the sign language here, layered, superpositioned, right? So those images, you have to interface, meaning you have to interact with them, and you interact with them. One of my methods is meditation. Meditation is a powerful way to interact, interface with the images, uh, and you have to bring those images up, not when it's too late. Uh, Not involuntarily. Because, see, when a situation occurs and a trigger occurs, those images, it's too late because now they're showing up violently. This is why this what I'm saying here accounts for a lot of the violence we see in society. It accounts for a lot of the dysfunction. It doesn't have to show itself violently. It could also show itself dysfunctionally. So a lot of the dysfunction that we see inherent in our society, this what we're discussing here is responsible for that. You know what I'm saying? A lot of it, not all, but a lot. Uh, a lot of the I think dysfunction is just the perfect word. We're gonna leave it there. There's other words I can use, but dysfunction I think is suffice me to use the dysfunction. So you can't wait till it's triggered. It's too late. You have to spend time in isolation. I'm going to give you another tidbit here, another gem. And this is probably going to be the hardest thing for us men. Talking to the men here. This is going to be the hardest thing for us to do. Abstinence. Abstain, abstain, abstain. I just ordered a book. It's on its way. It should be here Tuesday of next week. It's called Semen Retention, The Benefits of Semen Retention. It's an ancient practice practiced by the sages, ancients throughout bygone days. And it's a very powerful practice. It's used to help with the interfacing with your images in your subconscious because it's a life force. It's your sexual energy, It's the most powerful force. Uh, it's the most powerful force in your body, which is your sexual energy, found located in your root, the root chakra. So when you practice semen retention, you unblock your root chakra and allow the energy, the power to flow from your root chakra, which is right below your sacral chakra. And that energy flows through your body and unlocks, right? Your other, there's several chakras, seven to be exact. It unlocks the other chakras in your body, whether it's your throat, your crown, uh, your solar plex, and allows by unlocking, it's releasing, right? Releasing all the pent up uh, negative images that's being carried, that we're all carrying. We're all carrying something. There's not a human being that walks this planet that's not carrying something, carrying some internal burden, right? Heavy that does that's uh it's compounding, meaning it's feeding on itself and it's growing. And then, like I said, we see it again, dysfunction. Just suffice the word dysfunction. So yeah, meditation, semen retention, which is abstinence, abstaining from interacting in sexual activities voluntarily. And this means a lot. Someone was telling me the other day they haven't had sex in a while, so they're practicing semen retention, right? And I asked them, but yeah, but have you jerked off? They said, yeah. I said, well, that's not semen retention. Semen retention means you don't masturbate, you don't watch pornography. Pornography, I'm gonna do another video on that and how that destroys the mind, how that destroys your brain. We're gonna talk about that next. But semen retention is the complete abstinence. Like you're not jerking off, you're not watching pornography, you're not masturbating, which is the same word. Uh, you're not engaging in promiscuity with any woman. You're voluntarily choosing, right? It's not that you can't get it. It's not that you can't get a woman. It's not that you're a square and don't know how to get a woman. You're choosing to say, okay, you know what? I want a greater purpose. You're choosing a higher purpose uh, for your basic instincts, your basic urges, excuse me. It's a basic urge. And you're saying, you know what, I'm choosing something greater with that energy. Rather than just release it, I'm going to use it. And you have to do things that you can transmute that energy into. You can't just sit on it. You have to be actively doing something constructive. So you're taking the energy, which is base. It's called alchemy, to be honest with you. Alchemist, and it's called the alchemical process, which means you take something base and you convert it, transmute it into something more of value and worth. So it's like taking a base metal and turning it into gold or some kind of precious metal. That's what alchemy is. So that's in the material, but in the spiritual, you're taking that sexual energy, which is base, raw, it's totally normal, and you're saying, okay, rather than use it in a just a base in its lowest form, I'm going to use it in a higher form, right? And you take that energy and you use it to clean your mind, right? You practice transcendental meditation where you're meditating, right? And you're centering yourself, you're grounding yourself. What I do when I meditate, I use affirmations. You have to use the I am, because I am is the name of God in the Bible. That's one of his various names. I am, because whatever comes after that, you become. So when I meditate, I say I am this. I don't say I will be. I don't say I want to be. I don't say I desire to be, because all those are telling your subconscious mind to give you more of that. If I say I want, my subconscious mind's here that I have lack. So it's going to keep giving me lack. That's how it works. So you have to say I am, right? And whatever you put after that, I am blank. Whatever you put after that, you're slowly molding. I am cleansed. I am purged, right? I am free. I am released from poisonous thoughts or poisonous thoughts in my own mind, or, images. So yeah, I'm at the 24-minute mark, so I'm going to wrap it up now. Hopefully this is useful. Till next time, peace.